and then I'll ask you.
I was trying to remember, Heather, how many times have we had you to adult ed? Is this the third or fourth time?
I think it's the third.
Okay, good.
This is the first time doing it virtually and on Zoom. So there might be a learning curve for me. And if I get so animated that I fall out of the screen, just be patient with me. I'll come back.
Okay.
I usually am moving around and, trying to engage everybody, the school teacher in me. So now that I'm seated in front of a camera, it's always, it feels a little different for me.
Yeah.
But I can't get it up there. I can't.
Yeah, years ago I did a presentation and it was by distance and there was no visual feedback of the audience. And it was probably one of the most challenging presentations I ever made because you had to assume people were responding to what you were showing them. And then they were going through on the computer what you were doing. And we didn't have cameras at that point with the systems. It was extremely challenging, but I can appreciate your enthusiasm and needing to move and those kinds of things. But hopefully this will all work out. I have great confidence.
Well over. It is 10:30, and I'm going to ask John to go ahead and introduce Heather and ask the rest of us as we come on board to mute our mics unless we're speaking. And we're recording now. So, John, will you take it away?
Okay, during my brief intro, I invite new arrivals to grab pen and paper because Heather will put you to work. It's a real treat to have Heather back now. I think this is her third presentation. It's actually a real treat for me because I had booked her for a couple of the previous ones, but inevitably had to travel for some reason or another. So I actually missed her previous two presentations for that reason. Heather doesn't need a lot of introduction, but I just a few things to remind you of. She's actually an educator who became quite interested in integrating arts into the curriculum.
Yours is great.
For many years,
exactly what you want to be seeing.
Much of it is in the Chicago area.
You got volume.
Places, and then moving to Madison, she set up a sort of a consultancy, I guess, where she consults not only with educators, but also businesses and other entities to try to bring arts into daily practice as a way of rejuvenating and incorporating creativity into this. She has a very nice website, Creative Across the Curriculum, I believe it's called, which is really interesting to look at, and I really look forward to hearing more. I did want to acknowledge Heather has really done a lot of things for our church. I think one of the notable things is she's been working with confirmation classes to do different creative projects like photography and other things. And I think this has been a real service to our church, and it's been really, I think, a big hit with the students' confirmands as well. So with that, Heather doesn't need a lot of introduction, but let me pass it on to her, and you guys can get ready to do a little creative practice here.
Thank you, John. Thank you. I'm glad to be here, especially on a Thanksgiving weekend. I'm just thrilled that so many people are still around, ready at their house to log on to another Zoom call. So thank you. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen, and those of you on the phone, I'll try and talk through I think we have 2 or 3 that are joining on the phone. So I'll try and talk through what our visual is, but feel free to reference the recording that we're making if you want to see the visuals. So this is my company, Creative Across the Curriculum. And I do have a website, and I work with businesses and schools and higher ed and community groups to try and increase creative thinking. So John mentioned the arts, and that's a great way to do that, but that's not the only way. So I am going to talk to you today about the why you want to consciously embed creative thinking into your winter, especially this COVID-19 winter, and how you can do that in really easy tweaks. But you want to really be thinking about it and plan for it and be strategic in order to make it actually happen. I am going to give you homework because, of course, I'm a teacher. So that's just embedded in my life, is to make students miserable by doing work at home. But I'm hoping that this is not a miserable experience for you. So I want you to take away from today that over the next 3 to 6 months, I want you to write down an idea that you have to increase opportunities for creative thinking in your life. And I would love for you to share that with me, or you could share that with any of the pastors. But as soon as you, or you could share it with somebody in your life. But as soon as you share it, there's that a little bit of accountability. So that's your homework assignment at the end of this experience, is to find an opportunity, not for artwork, but for creative thinking that you're going to do over the next 3 to 6 months. And what we're going to talk about today is when you plan for those opportunities for creative thinking, you also have fed your brain some really healthy mental health feelings on self-reliance and independent thinking and the ability to take risks and enjoy those risks. So that's your homework assignment that I'm giving you beforehand. So as we go through today, you would be able to plan for what would work best for you. John, if you would do me a favor and kind of monitor the chat room if a question comes up. When I have shared screen, I can't always see everybody's hands. So if you have a question, please feel free to type it into the chat box, or unmute and say, hey, Heather, hey, flag, stop. And I'll be happy to stop, and we can answer questions as we go too. John, would you be willing to do that for me?
Yep, I will do.
Great, thank you. All right, if you haven't been to my workshops previously, I start each one with this image of the brain. And thumbs up if everybody can see this image on their screen. It's got 4 or 5 different colors. Anybody not able to see it? Okay. Good, I see almost all thumbs up. Great. All right, so we're going to do a little activity about the 5 parts of the brain when we're talking about a learning experience. Now, full disclosure, I am not a neurologist, so this is not a science brain expert here, but when we're talking about a learning experience, I want us to understand all 5 parts of the brain and what their purpose is. So we're going to start right back down here with this red area called the cerebellum, and that's at the base of your neck. So if everybody will touch the back of their neck, touch the back, and everybody say together, even though you're muted, say together cerebellum.
Cerebellum.
Great. All right, now your cerebellum is your coordinated muscle movement. So if you didn't have your cerebellum activated, you would still be able to move, but you wouldn't be coordinated. So if you picked up your pen and you wanted to write, that is coordinated muscle movement. You wouldn't be able to do that without your cerebellum. So we're going to do a little movement here. You're going to flex your right arm and you flex your left arm, and then clap your hands together, kind of getting your fingers to intertwine like a prayer movement. And we're going to say cerebellum at the same time that we're doing this. So I'll model for you. We'll tap the back of our head and say cerebellum. And then we're going to say cerebellum and clap our hands together. So everybody give it a try. Cerebellum. And now flex one arm, cerebellum, and clap your hands together. Great. If you didn't have your cerebellum, you wouldn't be able to coordinate that. You wouldn't have been able to get your fingers to come together. You wouldn't be able to write because that takes coordinated muscle movement. All right, so now we're going to move up the blue, which is your occipital lobe, and that's in the back of your brain, just above your cerebellum. So tap the back of your brain and say occipital. Yeah, your occipital is all your visual input. So I want you to point 2 fingers to your eyeballs and then point 2 fingers to the camera and say occipital. I kind of call this snake eyes, right? Like and that's your visual input is your occipital. All right, now we're going to move up to the green area, which is on top of your head on both sides. So if you'll put your hands on top of your head and say parietal. Parietal. Now your parietal is going to be, it's some on your left side and some on your right side on the very top. And your parietal puts items in order or in a sequence that makes the most sense. It also tells you where you are in space. So you don't miss the chair if you're sitting down, or you don't run into the wall, or I have bruises on my thighs from running into desks because I don't know where I am in space in the classroom. So it tells you where you are in space. It puts items in order, and it also is your sense of touch, your sense of the feeling that you get on your skin. So for parietal, we're going to say 1, 2, 3, because that's putting items in order. And then we're going to do kind of sparkly hands like this to the side for where we are in space. And then at the very end, we're going to feel our own hands. So we're going to say, because parietal's on our head, on the top of our head, we're going to say 1, 2, 3, and then show me your sense of touch. All right, so let's try it all together. Parietal, everybody say parietal. And that's on the top of our brain. And we're going to say 1, 2, 3. Good job. Good job. So that's 3 parts of the brain so far that are needed for a high quality learning experience. The next is going to be this blue area, which is your temporal lobe. Everybody say temporal. Good. And I want you to find your temples, which are next to your eyes. Kind of a little bit above your ears, and that's where your temporal lobe goes on either side of your brain above your ears. So I want you to find your temporal and kind of rub your temples, because that kind of feels good. And, oh wait, hang on. What is temporal lobe? Oh, it's your memory. So people always freak out like, oh no, she's forgotten her presentation, the poor woman. So no, your temporal is your active memory, your long-term memory, and your short-term memory. So everybody find your temporal and say temporal, and now say, I can't remember. And that's how you can remember that it's for your memory. All right, so these are 4 huge parts of the brain that are really, really important. And if you look, that takes up almost 2/3 of your whole brain. But when we're talking about a learning experience that involves creative thinking, we need this big purple area in the front, and that's called the frontal lobe. And I want you to put your hand over your forehead and say frontal lobe. Good. Now your frontal lobe, this is where your critical thinking, creative thinking, problem solving, initiative, drive, all the things that make you wonder, like I wonder what would happen if, right? So your frontal lobe, we're going to tap the very front of our brain and say, Eureka, Eureka, because that's like the most exciting kind of thinking that we can do. All right, so if these are the 5 parts of the brain, and there won't be a quiz on this later, I promise, what I'd love to do real quickly is see if anybody is willing to go through one of the motions to remember what each part of the brain is, with no grading, no quiz. Is anybody willing to unmute themselves and let us know what the cerebellum does? And if you want to do the movements, you can. Anybody?
Coordinated muscular.
It's the muscle coordination.
Good job. Yeah, the cerebellum. So if you want to show with me, right? Cerebellum, and your hands are moving together. Wonderful job. All right, how about the occipital, this blue area down here?
Vision.
Yeah, your visual input. Thank you. Visual input. So you see, even on the screen, for those of you that are logged on the computer, you have a visual to help you have an idea of what this brain is looking like. So that's visual input. Wonderful. All right. How about the parietal up here? This is a hard one, this green one.
See.
Where you are in space,
Where you are in space.
touch and ordering of things, and perhaps sequencing.
Absolutely. So putting things in the right order, your sense of touch, and where you are in space. Wonderful. All right, let's go to the blue, temporal. And we put our hands on our temples. Anybody willing to remember? Hint, hint.
I have a question there, Heather.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought that in terms of memory, the hippocampus was very much involved. So where is that in relation to the temporal?
That's almost in the exact same spot, but towards more the center of the brain.
Okay.
So
Okay.
deeper
Thank
in,
you.
behind that blue section. Great question. And I should also note that none of these operate in solitude. These are divided into colors to show you general areas, but it's not like the temporal lobe is blue and there's a wall between that and the parietal. Again, not a neurologist, note that, but that all of this is very complex and connected, and none of them operate in just one area. Our brain, the only one that you really could, you could still exist without your frontal lobe, right? You would need a lot of assistance, but you could, you wouldn't be able to have any of your higher order thinking skills. And they have removed that part of the brain in people before for many reasons, but you wouldn't have the same quality of life of the types of thoughts that you had. Great question. All right, so temporal is memory, and then that frontal lobe, anybody remember?
Well, it's what I would call the executive functions.
Yeah. So this is where you're doing your higher order thinking, your creative thinking, critical thinking, problem solving. So you really want to make sure, especially during COVID, that you're giving that front part of your brain some opportunities to do some work. Okay, so now that we have those, I'm going to walk us through a little activity. And I would love everybody to take their pen and their pencil, or their pencil and their paper, and write down a word that starts with T, the letter T as in Thomas, that you think no one else in the group of, how many people do we have here? No one else will write down. So I want you to think of a word that you don't think anybody else will write down. And I'm going to collect these words in our word bank. All right. So I'm going to stop share real quick and give you some time to think. So you're trying to think of a T word that no one else will write down. And then Pastor Ken, maybe you could call on people so that we make sure we've got everybody's T words. And I'm going to type them in a little word bank and I'll show them in just a minute. All right, does everybody have a T word? I've already done mine, turkey.
Turkey. Cheryl?
Thermal.
Thermal, okay. John Svarin, the T word?
He's left us.
Jeff, do you have a T word? Nels?
Claudia thought of the word thought, and
Okay,
I used the word turmeric.
okay.
Turmeric?
All right.
Yes.
Right?
Spice.
Spice.
Yeah, okay. Ron and Debbie?
Debbie had titanium,
Ooh.
and Ron had transatlantic.
Okay. Is Nan there?
Yes, I am. I had thoroughbred.
Okay, thoroughbred, yes. Okay, Rhoda and David.
I'm repeating one I had thought.
Okay.
I had trouble.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Andrea, do you have one?
Yes, I just put it in chat. Turntable.
Good. Got it.
Turntable. Okay. Gail, are you around?
Thorax.
Thorax. And then next on my list is Mary Marquardt.
People have forgotten
Yeah,
how
you
to
have to
unmute.
unmute to answer.
You're still on mute. Mary, if you unmute, then you'd be okay. I'll come back to you, Mary. Tony.
Toast.
Oh, okay. All right. Jim.
Tritium.
Okay.
One more time for me.
Say that one more time, Jim.
Tritium. Oh, tritium. That's
Hold my
TRIDIUM, the Great 3 Days. Yeah, that's it's a Latin word. Okay, all right. And then there's 608-238 2732. Don't know who that is. Okay, let's go. Go ahead. I'll go to Carolyn.
I had tennis and John had turnkey.
Okay. Lois Anderson. Token. And then Ann. Ann, do you have one?
Trampoline.
Okay. Wonderful. Jenny.
Timpani.
Timpani. Okay. And we've got 608-231-8503.
I wonder if that's mine, Nancy, 231-3503.
Yes.
Topographical.
Okay, topographical. Georgia Manning. We'll move along to 608-238-4629.
Tadpole.
All right. And then we have Mary Holm. Then we'll move on to Sandra Stallings.
Pencil.
Tinsel?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh,
One more.
wonderful. Dale Miller.
Together.
All right.
Okay.
In the interest of time, I'm sorry if we didn't get to everybody's words, but we have a great list here. So I am going to get this going again. And share my screen. And then here is our challenge, our creative challenge. Now you'll notice that we're not doing anything with art. We're not going to create anything in art. We're just going to see if you can create a sentence using as many of these keywords as possible. So I want you to take your pad of paper. Can everybody see them? And forgive me if I spelled any wrong. Can everybody see them? Oh, shoot. There we go. All right, so I want everybody to take their pencil and their pad of paper and see if you can come up with a sentence that uses as many of these words. You can add in some other words. You can add in the words. If your T word didn't get in there, you can add in that word and see if you can come up with a sentence that uses as many of these as possible. I'm going to give us, I know it seems rushed, but 1 minute. So everybody try and come up.
Heather, you might want to remind people to mute because there's feedback.
Sure. If you have unmuted to share your word, if you'll mute it back. Thank you, Cheryl. All right, 30 more seconds. Okay. Anybody willing to share their sentence they created with the letters T, with all these words that start with T?
Heather, Claudia came up with the following words can be placed in alphabetic order: tadpole, and then on to the rest of the list.
Oh, wow. I think we have a winner. She's used all of them. Very creative, right? Anytime you have people finding a technicality, you know they're in that frontal lobe. That is awesome. Sometimes with my son, I need a little less technicalities and I just tell him to eat his broccoli, right? But for the most part, anytime you've got that technicality idea, that is major frontal lobe. That's great. Anybody else want to share theirs? Yes, Gail.
The toasted turkey put on his thermal underwear to go on a transatlantic journey on the titanium turntable, expecting no trouble, together with the tennis.
Yay! Wow! Wow! That was wonderful. Anybody else want to share theirs? We'll take maybe one more.
I started.
Good, Andrea.
Okay. The thoroughbred, tadpole, and turkey played tennis together and afterwards ate toast.
Yay! Wonderful, wonderful. All right, so let's take a minute and think about the brain and what we just did. Now, this did not involve any art per se, right? Like there was no paint, there was no singing there. We were just playing around with words. And any type of activity that involves playing around is really good on that frontal lobe. So I want you to think about the experience that we did. We had a laugh, and that's always good for your mental health. We also took some risks. All those people that were willing to share their T word, and I apologize if we didn't get to everybody's, that was risk taking. And then we had people who were willing to share theirs out loud, right? Which is another type of risk taking, which is really healthy for the brain. Then third, you had me to kind of give you that nudge, to push you to try something that maybe you're like, really? Really, you want me to do this on a Sunday? Like, come on, lady. I don't have more time for writing down T words. But it's the process of engaging your brain and making yourself maybe go a little bit outside your comfort zone that is really, really healthy for our brain. And if you think about the next 3 to 6 months with winter coming in Wisconsin, You know, we're not in Florida. That's where we moved from, was Tampa, Florida. And the winter in Tampa, Florida is nothing like the winter here, right? So we've got winter in Wisconsin. We've got COVID. The sun is going down earlier and earlier. You want to make sure you're strategically placing times where you're out of your comfort zone. You're taking that risk. You're having a laugh with it. You're not taking yourself too seriously. You're allowing yourself to make some silly mistakes. And then maybe you need somebody to give you that little extra push, right? To say, would you be willing to do this with me so that I can have a little bit of accountability in that work? All right, so let's go to another activity that I have a little path on this screen here for you. And I want you to think of this path. It's got one little loop-de-loop and some curves. It's just a line drawing. I want you to think of this path as your typical daily routine. What taxes your brain? You might go through the same types of loop-de-loops and maybe a curve and a turn here and there. And I'd love for you to pick your finger up if you have this visual in front of you and literally put it on the screen and trace this path for me. Okay? Start over at the left and go up the loop-de-loop and then around the curve. All right, and now let's go back to that brain idea. Did you use your cerebellum and move your body in a coordinated way? Yeah. Did you have some visual input in the occipital? Yeah. Did we have to put things in order? Yeah, I told you where to start and you had to get to the end. Did you have to remember? Yeah, you had to know where your finger is and you had to know where to start on the left, what left and right is. But there wasn't some big taxing aha moment in that frontal lobe, right? It was kind of planned. And during a pandemic, it feels really good to have a plan that is routine, that keeps us going, that we know what's coming, and that a lot of times just makes us feel really in control. The problem is that frontal lobe is dying for that attention, to have a laugh, to take a little risk, to enjoy the process. And so you want to make sure that you are strategically planning for some relief for that frontal lobe to be able to experience that risk taking. There's an asterisk here though. A lot of our jobs and our families require a ton of effort in that frontal lobe. Right? If you're an essential worker or a healthcare worker right now, your frontal lobe is taxed throughout your whole day more than usual. So if you are finding that your frontal lobe is really taxed with your family requirements or your job requirements, it's even more important that you strategically plan for a creative outlet for that frontal lobe that does not have all of that pressure and risk associated with it. So it's just for the laugh. It's just for the creative process. It's just to enjoy taking that risk. Does that make sense? Are there any questions about that? So a lot of people's jobs right now are even more taxing, or even at home. I have 3 little ones that I'm trying to run a small business. My husband works right behind me, and the 3 of them are on virtual learning. Right? And the kindergartner can't read, right? So, I mean, I have like way taxing here, but that's not going to give me necessarily the relief and the joy of just pure creative thinking for the fun of it, for my individual growth. All right, so let's mix it up. Let's kick it up a little bit. And now what if this is what you say I'm going to try today? So if you see, there's a little blue line in this maze of where you could start, but does anybody see a different starting place on the screen? Thumbs up. Anybody see a different place you could start? Yeah, what if I plunk it down right in the middle? So now everybody take your finger again, and this time find a spot in the middle of the maze and see if you can find a way out. I'll give you 30 seconds to try and find a way out. Oh, I hit a dead end again. Oh. All right, I'm not going to go left this time. Oh, I'm doing better. Oh, I hit another dead end. All right. Now, let's talk about the brain again. Did we use coordinated muscle movement in our cerebellum? Yes. Did you have visual and occipital? Yes. Did you have to put things in order to figure out which way would be better? Yes. Did you have to know where you were in space for the parietal lobe, right? In order to find your way out? Did you have to have, you probably used some memory, understanding you've done a maze like this maybe before, and that you're not actually trapped in there forever. You probably knew that going in. And now what happened when you hit a dead end? Did you just give up, or did you say, well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to try it a different way? And I'm going to see if this way would work. And there's very little risk, right? You're not penalizing yourself. You're not spending a lot of time beating yourself up like, oh, I didn't get through the maze. You were able to just recover and keep going. So think about creative thinking as that process where you try it in a way that you haven't done before. You take the risk, you recover when you fail, and you backtrack and you try it a different way. You see what might happen if I do this. There's a researcher named Bressani who has done a lot of research on children's play and the type of play and the risks that they take when they're playing. So for example, like jumping off of a tall jungle gym, or running really, really, really fast, or riding your bike really, really fast down a hill. Also rough and tumble play. Those types of risks actually feed this kind of creative thinking in the brain to say it's okay to take the risk and to find out what's going to happen. And what they're finding is that it's never too late to start taking those playful types of risks. So again, if we think about in the next 3 to 6 months, when things are even going to look worse, probably with COVID and with the shutdowns and with winter coming, that we want to find these areas where we're going to take risks that are for the enjoyment of the creative thinking rather than beating ourselves up or pressure or responsibility.
Heather,
Yes, yes.
the first thing that came to my mind when you popped that maze up was the book, Who Moved My Cheese?
Yes, yes. Now, so think about which part of the brain is who moved my cheese. Also, that's a book about kind of power and organization and structure, right? Where if you came into, I'm giving an example, if you came into someone's office and rearranged everything, how they would react, right? Or if you came in and tried to restructure a company without any input, people will freak out with change, right? Is that correct, Andrea? That
Yes.
And so tell us what you think. Which parts of the brain is that book addressing, do you think?
Well, I think it's your frontal lobe.
Definitely. And your parietal, right?
Yeah.
I like it organized the way I want it.
Exactly.
And there's no other way to organize it except for the way that I have it done. And people freak out about that, right?
They do.
If you've practiced feeding that process of change and recovery and things happening in a different way, your brain actually loves that. But most people who really freak out in those examples have not had a lot of practice in that type of thinking. They're very narrow in their way, one way to do it. Great connection. So now I want you to take a moment with your pad of paper, and I want you to jot down any ideas that come to mind of where you might be willing to try something new or to take a risk that would just be for you, for fun. What would you like to create something like we did with the sentence, right? Create something that doesn't exist right now? Would you like to advocate in a way that you've never advocated before? Would you like to take on a cause that you've never tapped into, but you've always had this idea kind of percolating? Is there something that you do every day or every week? For example, do you drive to the grocery store and always take the same path? Would you be willing to turn right instead of turning left and see if you could come up with different ways to get somewhere? So we're not talking about you have to do an art project, right? We're talking about tapping that frontal lobe to take those little risks that are just to see what happens, just for the enjoyment. I'm going to be quiet for 1 minute while everybody kind of thinks and maybe jot down whatever ideas you're thinking of. This is just totally personal for you. Thirty more seconds. Okay, anybody willing to share theirs? You certainly don't have to, but anybody willing to give an example of something that they might try in the next 3 to 6 months? Well, I can share one that was for me, and then if that leads anybody to want to take the risk too, I have some time there. My mom taught me how to needlepoint, and her grandmother and mother taught each generations. And I've done 2 projects that I haven't finished, but I went ahead last month and I ordered 2 more projects because I know these winter months are coming up. And I'm not good at it. I haven't even finished a single project yet. But I know in the winter, when I'm trapped here again with COVID, that I'm gonna need something to just let my hands and my brain create and relax and enjoy it. So that's my plan for these winter months. And hopefully when we see each other again, I can show you that I've actually completed something. Even if I haven't, though, the process of having this risk and taking this goal and realizing that I don't really know if I'm going to make it or not is what's feeding that frontal part of the lobe. Anybody else have an idea? It doesn't need to be mind-blowing, right?
I want to try some fretwork on a scroll saw.
Oh, tell me what this is. I don't know.
Well, fretwork is where you have a piece of wood that you put on a scroll saw and then you cut out sort of the outline, but the pieces have to connect in a way so that when you're done with it, you can still have the piece of wood, but now you've got the outline of basically negative space in art.
Okay.
Close.
So you can find patterns and those kinds of things to try to do that, but so in essence you create bridges of wood to go between the spaces that you cut out then become an image.
Do you have all these tools already?
I'm sorry?
Do you have the tools you need?
I have the scroll saw. Now I just have to develop the skill.
There you go. Yay, yay. All right, we'll take one more. Anybody else have one more that they'd like to share? Anybody? Oh, there we go. Here, Dale's got an example. Dale, did you make that?
What is the example?
Dale, will you tell us a little bit about what you're holding up?
Unmute though. Remind people to do that.
You might have to unmute.
It's a piece of walnut that a friend of mine used a scroll saw on. And it says Jesus.
Wonderful. So Dale, are you going to continue? Do you feel inspired by this also, or do you have a different idea of what you might tackle in the next 3 to 6 months?
I don't have the tools to do this. I'm getting feedback because Mary Holm is in my room too. That's why I'm wearing the mask. Okay.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both for sharing. All right, so let's talk about what the reward is if you follow through on what this idea is. And the reward is actually happiness in your brain. There is research that proves that creative tasks, specifically using your hands. So if you can involve your hands, that's even better. But if you can't, if you just, like coming up with the silly sentence with T's, you use your hand to write. But if you can use your hands, that's even better. And we're not talking about walking around with a smile on our face the whole time. That's why I have that asterisk on the smiley face, because we're not just talking about being happy. We're talking about being content with who we are in the world and our role that we play in shaping our own destiny and our own decision making. And that when you've tapped into that creative thinking, that is your reward, is a feeling of happiness. And there's some research that shows that you actually get increased independent and initiative feelings in your brain. So once your brain gets a taste of, gosh, I made this choice and I kind of like it. I think I might order another one of those, or I think I might try this next time. So once your brain has that taste of making that choice, that creative choice, and starting on that journey, your brain actually gets really into it and starts wanting to take more initiative for more of those experiences. And then obviously you're taking responsibility for yourself. You're saying, I need this. I'm going to spend and schedule some time for this. And I'm going to take with it the good, the bad, and the ugly. So whatever the consequences might be, think of that maze again. When you hit a block, think of that as a negative or a bad or an ugly, and think about that quick recovery and how you're able to solve the problem to try and, well, let's see what happens if I do this then. When you're in those creative, that creative frontal lobe type of thinking and activities. The last two things that research shows is that having more of this opportunity for that creative risk-taking is going to build trust in yourself and the decisions that you want to make and how you evaluate the risks. And then you also have more trust and grace for others because you can see them in the same process. And so your turnaround for hurt feelings, or even with Pastor Ken's sermon today about saying you'll see the best in others. You will assume the best, that they are on that same process, on that same journey as you are. And isn't that what we need right now, right? Is more assuming the best instead of stomping on the worst. And then just like we did with our letter T activity, it's really important that you share what you're doing with other people. Even if it's not perfect, even if you're not selling artwork, even if it's just a silly little, I created this funny sentence, look at this sentence, and share it with somebody, that social interaction feeds that feeling of happiness from the creative risk-taking. So you took the creative risk, and now you want to share what you did with someone else. All right, so anybody have anything else that comes to mind from what you wrote down on your pad of paper, or what you're willing to try with now knowing that this is the reward that you could get?
Well, Heather, you saw what I did earlier with my sewing, and then of course napkinizing. So that's what I'll keep doing.
And Cheryl, have you noticed any of these? Are you looking forward to the new project that comes? Or do you realize that you've made mistakes along the way?
Yes. Now I got to work on Christmas stockings.
Right. So talk about initiative, right? She's already got her next project lined up because she's involved in this monthly, would you call it a crafting group?
Right.
And it comes with some mentorship. It comes with some classes with somebody kind of pushing you a little bit, like, here comes the next one. You better get going.
Weekly.
Weekly. Oh, I thought it was monthly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's monthly, you get the things, but it's weekly. She does something creative.
Yeah. And so, do you find that if you don't mind sharing, have you had any failures or any consequences that you were like, oh man?
Well, my problem is I found out I'm not really good at making straight lines with my sewing. It always looks crooked, but she says that's part of the process and that it's doodling. She calls it doodling.
See, there you go. It's creative mark making. That's what we need. Wonderful. Well, even just hearing you talk about it, I can see a joy that comes from the process that you're engaged with a group of people that have a common interest, even if it's not been their lifelong interest. This is relatively new for you. And you're getting that reward in your brain from that monthly or weekly or daily. There's no right formula, realize, right? But you do need to be strategic and plan for it. Otherwise, a month will go by and you will not have done that for yourself. So try and be in whatever idea you've written down in your pad of paper, try and really plan for some time. I would suggest weekly or monthly so that you know it's coming. And then don't, it's easy for me to say, oh, I'll just put mine on the side and I'll go meet everybody else's needs. But sometimes you just really have to say, no, I get 30 minutes, right? And this is for me. All right, I'm going to give you one more slide that I want you to look at, and this is some more research. Dr. Mahaley, he is on TED Talks, and he talks about the secret to happiness. And he uses this screen here, this chart, and on the y-axis, going up and down, are challenges. And you could pick any topic. This could be cooking. This could be finding your directions, right? Like getting from one place to another. It could be grocery shopping. It could, any challenge you want, you could put on here. And at the bottom of the y-axis is low challenge. And up at the top is high challenge. And then the x-axis going across is how much skills you have. So if you have low skills, then you're over here at the, to the left of the graph. And if you have high skills, you're going to be over at the right. And what he's interviewed many professional athletes and experts in their field of whatever they're studying. And he has found these emotions that the brain feels when they're in these different situations. So I'm going to give you the first three that are talking about low skills. So the brain, if you have low skill and a low challenge, you're going to be feeling apathy, right? Like, okay, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't really have the skills, but they're not asking that much of me, so it doesn't really matter, right? It'll be fine. If we go up in the challenge and you still have the same amount of skill, though, you start to get some worry. They're expecting a little bit more of me, and I don't know if I have the skills that I need. If the challenge is high and your skill level is still low, that's when you start to have those feelings of anxiety, where this is not fun, this is not relaxing, I'm not enjoying this. I need more skills in order to meet that challenge. Any questions about these three in the graph? Okay, let's say that now we're increasing our skill a little bit, and now we've got medium skill, but the challenge is still really low. You're going to be bored. I'll give you an example. My kids ask for quesadillas almost every night for dinner, right? And so I can put a tortilla with some cheese in the microwave and call it dinner. And I'm bored. I don't even they don't even really like it that much. I mean, it just is boring for them. So I would like to look through some magazines and recipes and come up with more fancy quesadillas. And now I'm up at the top. The challenge is higher. And now I have arousal. I'm like, ooh, I wonder if maybe I could put goat cheese and red peppers. And, you know, they would throw it out and be like, gross. But I would be a lot more excited about cooking something that had a little more challenge to it than a boredom quesadilla night after night. Questions about those two? All right, we've got two more to go to. The next is if you're in low skill or high skill and low challenge, you're feeling relaxed. So I'm in a mom's group with our church. We're the Spotted Cows because we all like to drink beer. And we're all Lutheran, right? So it's okay. And we like to get together at the Great Dane. We haven't during COVID, we've been doing Zoom calls, but we like to get together at the Great Dane and relax and chat and hang out. And a lot of them are knitters, and they're able to knit while they're talking and having a drink and eating. I don't know how they can do all that, but they're so relaxed. It's because the challenge is very low and they have high skills, right? If we go up a little bit, then the challenge gets a little bit harder and they have high skills, then you're at control. All right, Dr. Mahaley, who does this research, says throughout a month, at some point, you would want to get into a situation called flow. And flow is this perfect level of challenge to skill. So don't think of high skill as being an expert. Think of high skill being for you to match whatever challenge you've given yourself. And when you're in that flow, time flies. You don't worry about mistakes. You're able to handle them very easily because you have the skills, right? And you're feeling really good about the challenge and the progress that you're making. So flow is not an everyday feeling. You're not going to stay in flow for 12 hours out of your day. Flow is that strategic planning for some time to take my skills up a little to match the challenge. Questions about this graph?
Well, the secret to happiness.
All right, so what I would, again, challenge you for the next 3 to 6 months is you want to stay in this half of the graph, in that arousal, flow, control, relaxation. Somewhere in there during the next 3 to 6 months, you want to be strategically planning for, ooh, arousal would be, ooh, I wonder if I could do this. Ooh, I wonder, ooh, maybe I could, right? And getting that feeling, that excited feeling. Flow is when you're actually doing that project or idea, whatever it is that is making you think that you have the skill and the challenge at the right level, or control or relaxation. The brain, the frontal lobe, is going to get the most positive reinforcement if you're able to plan some opportunity for flow. And so my last slide is giving you some words to help you kind of get your brain to think about what you'd like to do. And remember, we're focusing on the creative thinking process. We're not focusing on artwork. So where would you like to explore? What would you like to try out that you've never done before? What could you evaluate and say, you know what, I'd like to change that. I usually do this, but I'd like to change this. Something little, it doesn't have to be. What would you like to adapt? So if you're into cooking, what recipe, what would you trade out? Gosh, I always put tomatoes in this. Maybe I'll try red peppers. What would you like to twist or tweak? And then you want to try it. Don't hold yourself back, especially in these next few months when things are getting tougher. Try it. Give yourself the opportunity to go for it and then communicate about it. So I would love for us to take a minute. We have 2 minutes until 11:30. Take a minute and think, what would I like to trade up or change up? I did a grocery basket here. Maybe that's your thing. Nels mentioned a tool that he has that he would like to try out, but it certainly doesn't have to be an artwork tool. What about a movie or a song or a book club that you could maybe get started on, or make a suggestion if you're already in one that you don't normally like those types of movies, but I think I'll give it a try this time. How about with community and some of the activism that's going on right now? Is there an area that you haven't done anything in that you'd like to, maybe I'll try this, and you kind of get that arousal, that idea? Or maybe there's a budget goal that you would like to make in order to donate or to support or correct in yourself with debt or student loans or wherever the financial need might be. What creative ways what tweaks could you make and do a change in order to improve how you're tapping your frontal lobe? So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And if anybody would like to share what they were thinking about maybe doing, we have now, we're exactly at 11:30, so I'm sorry if you need to go, that would be fine. But is anybody willing to share? If you're not willing to share here, that's fine, but I would love an email to the pastors or to me and let us know over the next 3 to 6 months what you tried. Anybody? Well, I am so thankful for all of you and coming today, and I hope you learned something that you can take for during this tough winter. And please email me if you have any questions. I'd be happy to talk further. We could do another Zoom chat if you'd like to do one-on-one or with a small group that you have already formed at Midvale, and we could talk through and see what your ideas are. If you need some advice, I would love to help.
Heather?
Thank you.
Yes.
My screen froze up for a second. But I actually have a women's network group outside of Midvale that I would love for you to talk to.
Oh, great.
Because
yes.
these ideas are fabulous. And I actually have started instituting some of them already, even before your talk. And this just gave me a boost to keep me going.
Good.
Yay. And so I just, this has been such an uplifting day between Pastor Ken's sermon and you. I'm so happy, and the sun is out, even though it's cold.
Right.
Yeah. So I think I know I have your contact information from that other group that we're involved in. So I'm going to reach out to you and I have a luncheon meeting with that networking group on Wednesday. And so I will get in touch with the woman who does the organization for, she's the person in charge of speakers.
Okay.
And
that'd be great.
Yeah.
And I put my contact information in there in the chat if anybody needs it.
Okay. All right.
Feel free. And I don't know if you know this trick, but in where it says chat, if you pull up the chat box, and then you look down
Got
at
it.
the bottom, there's 3 little dots.
Yeah,
that-
I got it.
And if you click on that, it'll say save chat, and then you'll get everything that was typed in the chat. Right now, it's mainly words that start with T, right? So if you want to continue that activity, you have your list. But my contact info is there too. But feel free to reach out to the church or John. He can get you in touch with me as well.
I got it.
Great.
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Heather. For those of us who can practice our motor skills, we can,
There you go.
So thank you so much, Heather. I really appreciate your giving us some inspiration as we head through the last winter months before the vaccine comes. So we should really take this opportunity to pursue some of these challenges. I just wanted to say a quick word about next week. Next week we have another of our very creative congregational members, Jerry Apps. He'll be have a presentation on Christmas on the farm. From an earlier day. So we're blessed to have very talented people within our congregation like Heather and Jerry as well. So I don't know if there's any other comments, if Heather wants to hang on for 5 minutes or so, or questions, but I just wanted to thank everyone.
John, this is Carolyn. I just wanted to remind people that Jerry wants people to be ready to share stories next week too. So it'll be an interactive kind of program, and be thinking about a Christmas memory that you have that you think somebody would be interested in. So
even if
Thanks,
it's not
Carol.
on the farm.
right.
It's good. He's making us work. I like it. I like it.
Excellent.
I am happy to stay on if anybody has any questions or you want to talk, that would be fine too. Stay safe.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Pastor Ken and Heather. John as well.
Heather, I will direct any emails I get to you, and I think we should have had you on maybe 4 or 5 months ago while we were all these challenges.
Well,
but
we all didn't really know. Remember when we thought it was only going to be 2 weeks?
Yeah, we were pretty
Yeah.
naive. So,
Lois,
think
you
so.
have a question?
Yes, you're at the very end, you had a focus on creative thinking process. Exploration was the first one. I was going to write those down, but you went through it really fast.
Yeah, you want me to email them to you?
Sure.
Sure.
You have my email address?
I do, from this summer when we did our book study on Dear Church. All right, I'm writing it down.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I'm glad you came.
This was good. I have lots of creative things I can do.
All right. Well, make sure you share them as the months go by. And even if you want to share them with me, I would love it.
Thank you. Sometimes I have too many things to do that I end up doing nothing.
That's why we have to schedule it, right? And be strategic.
Leaving you.
I'm sorry?
Bye.
Carolyn, do you have a question too?
I don't think so, although I would have a comment that my granddaughter apparently wants something called a cat's cradle. And it's a new way, or a way of I think, felting wool. So that's for me going to be the new creative project.
Are you going to get one for yourself too?
I don't think so. I don't have a cat.
It's for a cat. Oh, I get it.
Yeah, and it's made out of felted wool. It looks like a big bowl, but I don't know quite how to do that. So that's going to be a new learning experience.
There you go. There you go. I love it. I love it. Well, keep us updated on the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Okay.
And if it's sturdy enough to hold the cat, right?
Right.
Well, thank you very much.
All right,
Heather
Pastor
and
Ken,
John.
thank you. Thank
Mhm.
you, John.
Yeah, we'll be praying for elementary schools to start up again.
Yes, yes. The elementary And on that note, I'll end the meeting, okay?
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Okay, goodbye, everyone. Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Heather.